The last main topic in set theory is going to be taking all of the ideas that we've talked about in the past, the ideas of intersections and unions and complements and cardinalities, elements, subsets, and looking at them in the context of multiple sets. So not just maybe two sets, but three sets, four sets, just kind of expanding this out. And so we'll take a look at an example that we talked about in a prior video, books of the Bible, okay? And in this case, I have the universe, the big set, is just the books of the New Testament. We're just going to focus in there. There are 27 books in the New Testament. And as I've stated before, they're split up into certain categories. You have the Gospels, which are the 4 accounts of Jesus' life, the Acts, the book of Acts, which is a historical writing of the early church. You have the epistles. There are 21 epistles, which are letters that were written. And then you have one book at the end, the prophetic book of Revelation. Okay, so it's kind of split up into these categories. Now you have multiple different authors as well. John, I have written up here, authored 5 of those books, and many other people authored. Luke authored 2 of them, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, and so many others. Paul wrote several of them, and so forth. But anyway, obviously it's not a religion class, just giving you an overview so that we can build these sets up in kind of an interesting way. And when I go through through looking at things in daily life, I see sets pop out periodically, and so yeah, I know, kind of weird that way, but just sets pop out. I go shop at Menards for deck screws, and I see sets popping up in the ways that the screws are categorized and organized, right? So by size, by width, and by length, and whether they're their deck screws are coated or whether they're wood screws, or all these things. All these different categories pop up, and they're really just ways of defining sets. Okay, so anyway, back to this. So I've got my universe as the books of the New Testament. G is my set of Gospels. Again, the cardinality of G is 4. That's the 4 Gospels, okay? So here I have the cardinalities of these 4 sets. E, these are the epistles. There were 21 of them. Those are the letters that were written by a variety of different authors. And then J is a set of books written by John, okay? Now, John wrote 1 of the Gospels. He wrote 3 of the epistles, and he wrote the book of Revelation, which doesn't fit into either of those categories, okay? So as we categorize things, think of them in sets. And we're going to use the Venn diagram idea again. And so what I'm going to do is draw the universe as a big rectangle. That's all the books of the New Testament, okay? And within this, I'm going to try to identify G, E, and J and their relative, their overlaps, how they relate to each other. So the Gospels, well, there's 4 of them. The epistles, there's 21 of them. Sometimes, we could judge them by their size. We could draw the circles bigger, smaller. I'm not going to do that right now, but I do know that there's no overlap between them. The Gospels and the epistles are disjoint sets. So I could draw them out. Here's the Gospels and the epistles, and there's no overlap there, okay? Now, the books written by John, there is going to be some overlap. He wrote 1 of the Gospels, 3 of the epistles, and 1 other book. And so when I think of the set in a Venn diagram for John, I'd want it to overlap both G and E and have something on the outside of both of them, okay? And so now I can sort of fill in these different spaces. The Gospels, there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, oops, I can't spell right here, there, and John. Oops, this of course is set J. Now John is in the overlap, right? Because John wrote it, it's one of the Gospels. The epistles, well, there's lots of them, right? There's 21 of them. I'm not writing them all down. Lots. Okay. But I do know 3 of them were written by John, the disciple. We'll call it 1, 2, and 3 because he wrote the standard titles are 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. So we'll just go with 1, 2, 3. And then he also wrote Revelation. Okay, Revelation is that prophetic book. Doesn't really fit into the other 2 categories. And then in addition to that, there's only one other book not listed out in here that doesn't fit into any of these 3 categories, and that's the book of Acts. And so that would just be the Acts of the Apostles, or the historical book of the early Christian church. And so that would fit into this category. So this pretty much encompasses the entire New Testament in terms of the overlap of the books here. Now I could have drawn the Venn diagram a lot of different ways. I could have chosen different sets. Maybe I could have chosen Luke, and then I would have had different overlaps in different places. But this is what I have, so it should work. Now I want to look at some combinations of these sets, different intersections and unions and complements. Okay, so for instance, the book of Revelation is in John, but it's not in either the Gospels or the Epistles. So it's in J, but not in G or in E, okay? And so that would be, so the set containing Revelation, that's kind of an interesting one, right? I would say that that is the, let's see, that would be the intersection of John with the books that are not in G and E. How do I write that? Well, if I take the union of G with E, G union with E, that gives me, let's see, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all of the epistles. Doesn't give me Revelation or Acts. So this is everything except Revelation or Acts. And then I intersect that with J. I'm sorry, not what I wanted to do. I want to take G union E, again, that's everything except Revelation and Acts, and then take that complement, so the complement of that set. So in the complement of that set is just Revelation and Acts, okay? And then I'm going to intersect that with J, which is Revelation, John, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd John. And that gives me just a set of Revelation, if that makes any sense. Okay, so again, the union, if I maybe break this down and write this in roster form, which again is going to be a lot of things, but the G union E is going to be all 4 Gospels, right? So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I'm abbreviating just using the first letter. And then all of those epistles, right? I'll put lots of epistles. And that's all of them. Again, I'm trying to be a little goofy there. This is not perfect roster notation. If I then take the complement of that set, right, then I'm looking at everything except the Gospels and the Epistles. Well, that's again going to be just Revelation and Acts. I call it A&R, okay? Acts and Revelation. Now, if I take that set and then intersect it with J, J, of course, being all the books written by John, those 5, Well, the only one that's in the intersection that overlaps is Revelation. It happens to be in this set and in this set, right? It's in this complement set, and it's also in John. So that gets us down to just Revelation. Okay. Cool. That was actually a little bit difficult to come up with, I would have to say. There are many ways to go about combining these. Obviously, the overlaps here are just simple intersections. So we have, the book of John itself in a set that would be considered G intersect J, right? It's got that intersection there between those two sets. If I just wanted to look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that set, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, then I'd be looking at, it'd be G intersected with, because I want everything in G, and I want to intersect G with everything not in John. Does that make sense? So I take everything not in John, which would be the epistles out here, the gospels here in Acts, and intersect it with the gospels. Then these three are the only books in both of those sets. So it would be G intersected with J complement. Yeah, that should work. These are a little bit tricky, right? So J complement again is the three gospels, lots of epistles, and Acts. You intersect that with the gospels, which are these 4 books, and the only thing in the overlap are these 3, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. No, I'm sorry, Matthew, Mark, Luke. Okay. All right, so anyway, so got those go together, and then these go together. Okay, kind of interesting. Now, we'll go through and kind of repeat this. We'll do some other combinations. In fact, we'll show one here in a moment where we have overlap of all 3 sets, where each pair of sets does overlap, and then you can kind of see again how some of these play out.